Hi, my name is Jenie Gao, and I am embarking on my first year of the full residency MFA program at Emily Carr University. I am a second-generation Taiwanese and Chinese American from rural Kansas and grew up on the land of the Kansa, Osage, Cheyenne, and Kickapoo. I completed my BFA in printmaking and drawing at Washington University in St. Louis and worked in the museum industry, public school system, and lean manufacturing before starting my own business in 2014. For the last 7 years, I have been a full-time artist and entrepreneur running an anti-gentrification arts business out of Daejeon, which is the land of the Ho-Chunk, also known as Madison, Wisconsin. My practice is rooted in printmaking, public art, social practice, and storytelling, mediums with a history of spreading democracy and breaking paradigms. I also consult for cultural organizations and the public sector in equitable best practices. And while I work across different mediums, my underlying systems remain consistent. As a printmaker, muralist, writer, what I really am is a matrix builder. Now, while all these mediums can be used to democratize space and information, they can also be used to exclude. People can use print media to spread misinformation and erect monuments to uphold oppression. Even our work towards social justice can be co-opted when we only focus on the symbolic and not on systemic change. And so I center my work on two questions. Who will this work serve, and how will it affect the surrounding ecosystem? So this is one of my recent social practice projects. Bayview Portraits is a collection of oral histories. Bayview is an affordable housing neighborhood and home to people representing over 14 nationalities. I was the interviewer, editor, writer, and book designer, and my collaborator, Jenie Gao, took the portraits. First and foremost, this project is a gift to the interviewees. Many of Bayview's residents are first-generation immigrants and refugees who have never shared their stories even with their own families. So this was a chance to record their stories. The oral histories and portraits all belong to the families. We built an agreement in which they chose what permissions to give us as the artists and to the neighborhood foundation that commissioned the project. The residents did not have to be in the book to use our service, and this is a crucial aspect of my work, that the systems we create adhere to the same values as the symbolism. Total, we worked with about 40 families, and 32 chose to be in the final book. I wrestle with a lot of dichotomies in my work. For example, I go between making large pieces that you can share and experience with others, and making books that are a personal experience where intimacy comes from choosing to spend your private time engaging with someone else's story. And so this is Portal. I create spaces of both wonder of grief, and Portal is a giant tunnel book that takes the intimate form of a book and turns it into a public shared space that people can run, roll, and play through. Portal moves with people as they move through its pages. And in contrast, this is the Eroding House, which is an antithetical placemaking project. I installed the Eroding House outside of a community center that remains a stronghold in the face of encroaching gentrification. The Eroding House blocks out the view of a condominium across the street, and it also faces this condominium with the image of blight that developers seek to eradicate. The Eroding House harkens back to my earlier works on grief, commemoration, and how we record our existence. In 2010, following my father's passing, I created the series For My Parents, which is a suite of woodcuts and artist books about our family stories. I was 21 years old at the time, attending WashU on a full scholarship, and I was determined to prove to my working class parents that I had made the right choice when I switched my major from computer science to the fine arts, and that I wasn't wasting the opportunity I had been given at a prestigious university. When my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, we did not tell anyone, and he passed away without even some of his closest friends knowing he was sick. I was working 3 jobs at the time to cover living expenses that weren't covered by my scholarship, and ended up giving all my money to my mom to cover my dad's medical bills. I found myself reflecting on why a family like mine folded into its own trauma and what it meant to play into our own erasure. Woodcut became a way of cutting pieces out to reveal what was important, and each woodcut came with an accompanying artist book containing a family narrative. This was the first body of work that I exhibited outside of school. And at each show, people cried for someone they had never met, whose flaws they did not know. And that ability to empathize with a stranger without scrutiny of their worthiness has stayed with me ever since. 12 years after my father's passing, we are again in the year of the ox. 2021 is the year of the middle ox. In the Chinese zodiac, 12 represents the completion of one cycle and the beginning of another. The year of the middle ox is from my ongoing series of drawings called the APA Zodiac, where I am reinterpreting what the zodiac animals would look like if they were formed in the Americas in Chinese diaspora. The order of the animals was determined in a great race, and the rat cheated by riding on the ox's back and jumping off at the finish line, stealing first place. Some superstitions suggest that years of the rat are tumultuous, like 2020. And so I created this giant altar to the ox and imagined, what if she's the rightful winner and 2021 is actually the year of new beginnings? Underlying the symbolism is again the system. Metal in its etymology quite literally means the substance of which we're made, especially that which is formed through hardship and resilience. Metal also represents industry and money, and I use projects like this to move money through the community. I hired local people, almost all BIPOC, for every part of this project's execution. And this is the first of several murals that a nonprofit is commissioning for this neighborhood in Milwaukee. And I changed the contract to prioritize artist rights and community. And so there's this understanding of the role public artwork can play when it's installed in the community long-term, built into the process. In the last few years, I expanded my business into a 1,700 square foot production studio. In Madison, BIPOC business owners occupy less than 4% of brick and mortars. And so this was the literal claiming of physical space in a city that's rapidly gentrifying. The physical studio itself was an extension of my artistic practice. I chose a studio close to public transit lines so people wouldn't need to be car dependent to get there. I designed the studio for accessibility and flow to accommodate how different bodies might move through a space. In the last 3 years, I have hired and mentored 24 paid interns and apprentices for my apprenticeship program. And finally, part of my studio rent subsidized affordable housing in my neighborhood. And so every part of my business calls into question what impact an artist can have on a community's ecosystem. When I decided to move to Vancouver, I worked to make sure that another artist could move into the space. And so that space that I improved would not be co-opted following my departure. I resent dominant narratives like the starving artist that are designed to gatekeep who gets to be a player in this field. Oftentimes, I hear that artists are powerless in these situations, and I don't believe that. Even in an unfair system, we can choose to set our own boundaries and expectations, and we will find people who are ready to meet us there. As a woman of color from a working class background who has become the socially mobile generation in her family, I am very cognizant of how money flows and to whom it flows as a result of the work that we create. And let's say it for the record, representation without compensation is exploitation. In 2019, I co-led a protest of the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art for not paying artists they were attempting to use to attract a more diverse audience. In 2020, I wrote an article calling out the downtown business district and wealthiest organizations for their co-optation of the Black Lives Matter murals in Madison. I called out the hypocrisy of their symbolic solidarity with Black Lives Matter while taking public money to invest in increased surveillance and policing of commercial districts where only 4% of business owners were BIPOC and 0 were Black. And so this is the juncture that I'm at. I am a woman of color who is an essential breadwinner in her family. I've needed to monetize my art to have a viable career and prepare to be a multi-generational caretaker. I am also an open critic of the arts industry, at the risk of losing clients and opportunities. I've served on nonprofit boards, and I've left some organizations quite publicly. I'm frankly tired of doing outsized labor for incremental change. I'm tired of people like me being tokenized as the outlier statistic to suggest that because one of us can make it, the system is okay. It's not okay. I'm tired of the arts being weaponized for gentrification, and of all of us knowing it and still playing into it because there doesn't seem to be another way. There are other ways, better ways, and we are the visionaries capable of creating something different. And so as I explore countermeasures to gentrification for artists, my first area of research will be on labor, and specifically the role of compensation on women of color's ability to build careers in this field. And so I'll end with this artwork that I've continually revisited in these last 12 years called Waste Note by Song Dong, which is an installation of all the things Song Dong's mother hoarded after her husband died. Frankly, this is my mom's home in these last 12 years since my dad passed. In an interview, Song Dong shared that when he tried to clean his mom's house, she got really angry. When he asked her why she kept this stuff, she said she didn't want to live in an empty house, which was also the answer my mom gave to me. This type of hoarding is also a symptom of a generation of people who lived through the Great Famine and Cultural Revolution like my dad, and through the repeated colonization of Taiwan, like my mom. Song Dong's ability to use his art to collaborate with his mom and validate her is something that stays with me. As I read books and collect materials on gentrification, I come back to this piece to remind myself that art ultimately is a way to affirm that we exist. So returning to the earlier questions, who will this work serve and how does it benefit the surrounding ecosystem? If we believe that our coexistence is enough for us to value and take care of one another, then maybe we can use our labor towards building a more equitable world. And maybe we can start living and acting like the future we want is already here. Thank you.